welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us again today for another incredible and amazing, and I can't think of enough superlatives to describe the fabulous Santosh Kaur. Hello, Santosh.
Hello, super excited to be with you. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The dogs in the
background. I can hear the dog's super excited to be in the show today as well. What's the dog's name?
The dog's name is Rudy, and yeah, he's a Belgian Shepherd. Yeah, but just knock on the door and they're always excited. But yeah, super excited to be here, and thank you for having me and the opportunity to talk about.
Yes, so Santosh, for those of you who aren't aware of her and her incredible, amazing story, she's not only trained as a doctor, which is, you know, in itself something that takes many years of dedication and study and skills to get there. She also then identified an area within medical work that she thought was a problematic area and went out and became an entrepreneur and set up the company Smart Heal. Now, not only having one career, but two career, when you can see how young Santosh is still, is, you know, very admirable. But rather than me explaining it all, Santosh, please share with people how you came to be a doctor and then how you transitioned over to being an entrepreneur.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Michelle. How I decided that I wanted to be a doctor, that's something I knew from a very young age. And the reason for that is that a lot of the people on my maternal side, so one of my very close cousin, we were studying to be in med school together from very early on, even in the high school. I just knew that I wanted to be in health, and specifically I wanted to be a doctor. And so that was very clear, and prepped for it and went through it. And how I started Smart Heal, I always say I was always passionate about wounds. I had seen wounds in my family. My grandmother had dementia, and she had and also on her back, which I saw my uncle as a doctor treating. I have seen wounds in my private practice in India. I managed a HOD, a department, OPD, in a major hospital in a capital city in India, and we often saw a lot of traumatic wounds. So I was always fascinated by wounds. But when I say I like wounds, or the passion of wounds is a healing journey, it sounds very weird and counterintuitive to love wounds, but it's basically the journey of them healing. When you know how debilitating or the effect that can have on people's life, and once they heal, how they can get back to living their normal lives, I think that's very rewarding. How I got started with Smart Heal was always this fascination about wounds and choosing wounds and the wound healing, but really about the sheer frustration of how in today's day and age, when we've moved from, you know, computers to technology to now, you know, artificial intelligence, be it computer vision or machine learning, I'm using big terms here, but you know, there's so much advancement in technology, but when it comes to wound care, we're still using very old manual methods, whether the wound management is measurement, which is a key part of wound management, and whether it's how we communicate those images we take of wounds as clinicians, or how we decided what dressings we are going to put on the wounds. It's still very anecdotal. And it was just in the pursuit of that problem, that why are we still doing it manually? And is there an opportunity to make it more automated and assist clinicians and also the population in countries such as third world countries, or the less fortunate areas? Even in India, there's like a huge divide. So, you know, is there an opportunity that we could serve these people? And, you know, is there an opportunity that we can use this enhancement of human ability via technology in wound care? And that's how we got started with Smart Heal.
Wow, what an incredible journey. And I think firstly, you know, understanding and having so much support when you were at school, and being able to follow your dreams and idea of becoming a doctor is something that is really credible to your family and to your background, that, you know, you kind of always knew you wanted to do it, you went through the steps, and then you grew up and became a doctor, and then you so beautifully and eloquently describe how, yes, there's in many areas, not just AI, technology, etc., there's been quite a lot of advancement, and yet in health in particular, it's like we're still back in the dark ages, and we're still doing many of the processes and the practices. It's almost like we're still leeching people in a way to try and heal them, because the style of care around wound care, or about this or about that, is still, the best way I've heard it described one time was that health is still like a cottage industry. You know, it really hasn't advanced very far from there. With this incredible background and development now as an entrepreneur with Wound Heal and Smart Heal and all of that, what do you think then, being so successful in so many different areas at such a young age, what would you say or think then is what you would define as success for you?
Sure, that's a very interesting question. And what does success look like? I think there's two levels to that. One is personal and one is for Smart Heal. And I always say Smart Heal is a baby, but at the same time, it's this legend that sits outside of who I am. And I will do anything to protect it and make it successful. And that's one thing. And then what the personal success. And I think personal success for me is constantly growing within myself, that being a lifelong student, and believing in yourself in terms of whether it's why I am the right person to solve the problem of wound healing, and why I'm the right person to run Smart Heal and take it where it deserves to be. So I guess the success would look like, yes, constantly believing in myself, and knowing and setting new goals for, it's an ongoing process, and, you know, setting new goals for Smart Heal, but at the same time taking Smart Heal, and success for Smart Heal would look like that, you know, it is an established commercially viable product which is successfully being used across Australia. Whenever we come to talk about wound healing, that it's a word synonymous with wound healing, but we become the key industry player. I know I have big, hairy, audacious goals for Smart Heal, but that's what success looked like for me. And also that we are able to be so profitable that we're able to use it unsubsidized or almost free in countries such as, you know, the African countries, and whether it be remote areas of India. India is also very well developed, and they have so many areas. I always get this part. We're very successful, but there are also a part in India, you know, where we can really utilize this. I was talking to a couple of companies, but yeah, coming back to the question, I think that's what success looked like. It was so profitable, and there's areas within those countries in need that it's being used for free. And, you know, I would be very happy with that. That would be one part of it. The other part is also knowing that I'm chasing my dream and showing it to my son, that, you know, he doesn't need to look beyond to say, if you have a wild dream and, you know, it's a huge dream, you can dare to dream it. And then look, whatever I've done, whichever direction it is, the first thing is you should believe in yourself and you should be able to pursue your dream. And I think that's what success looks like for me, that I've given it my best shot and I'm taking it to that level, and also constantly growing as a clinical entrepreneur is what success would look like. That's all I can think of right now. My brain is going, there's so many things and metrics for success, but it's not necessarily having X million or financial. That is an important part when you're running a business and you're taking on investors. I mean, you always have to think of the ROI and the savings of time and money, and that's the business part. But when it comes to success, I think those are the two key metrics, how I would measure success for myself and Smart Heal.
And I really love, you know, that you do have those two areas of success. I think that that's really important to recognise, because yes, Smart Heal, and for many entrepreneurs, their business is their baby. So it's like having another child, and you want that child to be successful and to grow and develop. And you also want Smart Heal to believe in itself. So it was interesting hearing the things that you were perhaps describing for yourself, but also were very applicable to Smart Heal and the other way around as well. So I loved how you understood about that continuous growing and talked about so beautifully the dreams and going for your dreams, and success is that journey of going for your dream as well. It's, you know, not necessarily the number, although the number's important, like you recognise for investors, etc. But it's that dream and going for the dream and the growing as a clinician, growing as an entrepreneur, and Smart Heal growing as well as a really successful business. And I really admire that big audacious dream of, you know, being so successful that you can then start to help remote areas, regional areas, you know, wherever that may be in the world, where that technology can then help everybody to be able to manage wound care better and to be able to take, as we were saying, health out of the dark ages of the leeches and bring it a bit more forward into the 21st century with the whole using AI and technology in a way that can actually help and support everybody. Now, that journey and that development of Smart Heal and all of those different fabulous things that we've done, I also can tell that, you know, there's a lot of courage and conviction. It's not necessarily an easy or a straightforward journey. What sort of suggestions do you think that you might have for people that are also, you know, wanting to be a doctor, wanting to set up a successful entrepreneur business? These are really big goals that you've achieved. So how do you think other people, what suggestions do you have for how they can create that similar sort of mindset?
Oh, this is so juicy. I love it. It's like one of my favorite topics. Yeah, so courage, conviction, and what can you do? I think, again, I always put levels to everything, and I love breaking it down and then digging deep into it. And one way to look at it is going within. So always going within. I mean, you know, we are taught from a very young age, like my son went to prep last year and he came back saying, I'm going to do prep, you know, high school, university, and then I'm going to get a business and then I'm going to get a job. And it's like, okay, but what do you want? So that's what we are telling you, you should be doing, but what do you want, right? So from a very early on, you know, there's this trend of, that's just fine, like we'll define as a society what you want, but I think counterintuitive again, that you go within and find out your why. So before Smart Heal, I was, you know, working in a very stable government job in a very supportive environment. I also had started another business which was doing fine, and if it was just for money, I could have done that. But it was asking that questions that, you know, questioning your mortality. If I was to pass away tomorrow, would I be happy leaving where I am? And the answer was no. What is it that I want to leave the world in? And it sounds very cliche, but that's where your fulfillment comes in. That's when you have those down days and you have to drive that courage. That's what will drive your courage, when you know that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. So first things first, go within. Ask your question, like, what is it that you want to do, whether it's to be in acting or modeling? And I've pursued things like that, you know, whatever I liked. The second thing.
So this is, before we head off, because I can see your passion now and you're often racing around, what are the different suggestions that we can make? So I love this suggestion around going within and finding your why. And as a coach in the mindset space, this is what we work with a lot of people on, finding that passion, finding it is their like true north, or what is it that they want to really be doing. And I'm interested as well in when you were saying that you're already successful, you already had a good career, making good money. So when you're at that transition point then, what sort of things did you say to yourself? Because it's one thing to kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm here for. This is my legacy. But it's quite another to then start to take those action steps to move towards what you really want to be doing with Smart Heal. So what were some of the things that you did at that time to keep helping support yourself and supporting that natural fear and anxiety that I'm sure came up? What sort of things did you do to support?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing me back to that reality. Look, it is a balance. I mean, there's always two extremes where, go all in and burn the boats, and then you know that you're on this island and you have to achieve it and that there's no going back. And the other is the trapeze approach, which I really do believe in. I think it's about running two parallel things, and it's also your commitments, and then it will go back to those principle, measuring your viability. Is it feasible? The feasible for you. For example, I have a young child, so is it feasible for me to just mortgage my house twice and then put all the money in and not worry about where his school fee is going to come from? And then finding a way. I think two things I've always said: being optimistic, and then finding a way. If you look hard enough and you think of the word resourceful, I know it's used a lot, but it's also something, if you start focusing on, you will find a way. So if you start being resourceful, I do think that you should have a trapeze approach. You hang on to what you're currently doing, whether you have to take a second job, wherever you are, you keep doing that. And at the same time, validate, go through a proper process. It's important to believe in you, but at the same time, there's no need to reinvent the whole wheel. So if you're thinking of an entrepreneurship, for example, there's so many great accelerators out there which will make you take a very hard look at the idea you think is amazing and it's going to take over the world. It's very important to do that product market fit. What is the problem you are trying to solve? Is it actually worth solving? And the solution you are looking at, is it actually going to solve the problem? And is there, can you create a successful, viable business out of it? And it's fine if you can't. If you're a for-purpose company and your goal is not to be, having an ROI, then that's a separate story. But yeah, that's one thing. And then how do you eat an elephant?
So just before we begin, I love it with people like yourself that are already running 100 miles an hour. So if we just step back a little bit again to the two options that you so beautifully described there about, yes, when you were transitioning from a secure, stable job over to exploring being an entrepreneur in that world, the burning the boats or burning the bridges or the trapeze. So what you were describing so lovely there was around whether you make a straight cut and then there's no way of being able to go back, or whether you start to move over progressively. And for many people, moving progressively is, yes, the more sensible thing to do. And for others, yes, the situation may be that you don't necessarily have the drive to do it if you can go back. So again, for each individual person, when making changes in their lives, the different scenarios may or may not work. And so understanding that about yourself. But I loved how you said that what you got through with your trapeze situation was two really important things. One was being optimistic. So knowing that you believed in yourself and that you would be successful no matter what was going on and how things were going. And secondly, the being resourceful. So I know that many people that we've worked with over the years, when they're going through change and they're saying, well, I can't do it because I don't know how. I don't have the resources. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. So trusting, like you were describing, that the resources will arrive and the method will arrive. And you were beautifully starting to describe about how, as an entrepreneur, you can go to pitch fests and pitching. And what we mean by pitching is actually talking about your business. Talking about your business to other people very quickly can help identify whether it's going to be successful or not, whether people believe in it or not. But it's a great example of that trapeze where transitioning from the old life to the new life, what you were saying was, well, be resourceful, find out what that world is in that new life, and then go and start to check it out. So really great suggestions for the transitions that you've so beautifully and you make look so easy. But I'm sure as you were going along the way, and I really want to acknowledge as well that you were doing these transitions whilst having a young child, whilst thinking about, do I get the second mortgage, and all of these really important and very serious kinds of thoughts that you were processing through, and steps that you were taking. If you were to think about what were some of the key things that you were thinking about for yourself in terms of keeping your mindset focused on where you were going, and perhaps not getting too sidetracked with some of the fear or the anxiety that very naturally would have been coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where becoming a lifelong student comes in. So Dale Carnegie, in his book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, I've got this page folded and I often go back to it. And how he talks about is there's a set of questions. When you have a situation in hand, he tells you, you think of what's the worst that can happen, what's the possible options, and what can I do? Is it out of my control, and is it in my control? If it's in my control, what steps can I take? So definitely, I think sorry, I forgot your question. What was your question?
Well, I was just reflecting on you've obviously had to make some important decisions along the way, similar to a trapeze decision, that you would, either burn the bridges or do it as a trapeze. Do I take out a second mortgage, or do I get a second job? So I was just questioning, at those times where you were having some really quite important decisions to make, but you were answering it, because you were talking about, well, Dale Carnegie's, page in the book that you've got marked, what's the best that can happen, the worst that can happen, what's in my control, what's out of my control. So these really fabulous steps that you're saying that you think through and you look at and you evaluate when making these sorts of decisions, I think this is real gold in terms of what is it that you're doing in your mindset to be able to support yourself.
Yeah, and I think the other things always is having something, taking it out of your head and then writing on a paper. So I have this practice. I usually get up 5:30. What I do is I go straight into my office. I have an environment designed for it, as Atomic Habits James Clear talks about, and it's actually quite effective. So I have this environment created. I would do journaling, and I do this 15 minutes priming, which is like a gratitude, and then reflecting on the past good things, and then being grateful for something in the future you would want to achieve. And I think what it does is it puts your day in perspective, but also where you're at in your life and where are you going. It's very important to take stock and stop. So even if it's small decisions, just running your day, but also looking at the big things. So going back to what decisions would you make? It's also being ambitious. You have to be ambitious when you're doing these things, but at the same time, breaking down those things and then looking at those steps. So even if it's like, just focusing on how you're going to run today, that's what's going to define, how it's your tomorrow looking like. And those days are going to define your week, and then weeks are going to turn into months and into years, and where the business is going, how quickly you're going to be able to jump off of that trapeze or go full time, or you think there's no point because you were actually, you're stuck on the wrong ladder, so to speak. So it's really being realistic as well, writing it all down, and then looking at what's the worst, what's the best, is it possible, what are the steps you need to take. Because yes, massive action is cure-all, and luck is in the favor of those who are taking a lot of action. There's only so much luck will take you. But yeah, it's really breaking down those steps and then looking at the feasibility of it and going for it. Just go for it, take that step, and do the thing, and you'll have the courage. That is so true. Whether it's like, anything from small things like, like I said, what is this one big task that you have to do? So even if it's just one task that you work on your business today, definitely, I think those are the things you should be doing.
And you again so beautifully describe, and so fluently, and you can see again how you're not even necessarily thinking about it. It's just these natural, beautiful habits that you have. but the whole thing, like, you know, the break versus the trapeze, you know, you're then talking about having big, hairy, audacious goals, but also breaking it down into specific actionable steps. So being very grounded and realistic, but also very visionary, and where is it going to go? And I love the writing it down. It's such a powerful tool for creating the world that you want, for creating the mindset that you want, writing things down. And I love, I could see you being getting up at 5:30 and writing your journal and your gratitude, and also exploring, leaning into, you know, well, what if I take these action steps? Where will that lead? And is it feasible? Is it practical? Or do I need to take different action steps? And being open to your inner wisdom. I mean, that's what you're doing at 5:30 in the morning, is you're opening yourself to your inner wisdom and allowing in that stillness and the quietness of that time, that inner knowing to come forward around the best steps to take for yourself, and the most meaningful way to let your life flow, and your life flowing, whether it's in your journey to becoming a doctor or your journey to becoming and building a bigger and bigger entrepreneur space. And I was just fascinated a little bit around that, because what I tend to find is that these habits that people have built have been successful for them in different stages all through their life. So do you feel that many of the things that you're doing now were things that helped you get through those many years to study and train to become a doctor as well? Are these kinds of habits that you've had for many years through your life?
Yes and no. Some of the habits, for example, journaling, for some reason, and writing a to-do list, it goes back to my year 8, as I can remember the very vivid memories. I would buy these cute, beautiful diaries, and I would have my journals in there. And we used to call it writing a diary at the time. In terms of getting up, my father's always been an early riser. Whether we liked it or not, he was up and making noise around the house. When I started high school, which is year 11 and 12 in India, is to study med school, I remember I would tell my mom I had a test, and she would wake me up at 1:30 in the morning. And I would set the time. I'll be like, wake me up at 1:30. This is the time I need to prep. And she'll be sure to have, you know, a cup of tea or an orange or whatever to help me, you know, stay awake. And she'll be there to make sure that I'm right, you know, I'm up and awake. So there was a huge push for my mum, for sure. And I say push in a good way. That really helped. I wasn't always, you know, liking to be up at 5 o'clock or something, but just because, you know, there was huge demands of you. You had tuitions to show up to, you had all these competitions almost in the tests if you wanted to go to med school, and there's so much you had to do. So I often say my year 11 and 12, I did not know what was happening with teenage. I surely knew fashion, and there were a few things I liked, but outside of that, it was more you know, a very studious and very structured routine, and it was really structured by my mom. And now that when I think about it, going even earlier than that, we'll come home from school and straight away it was like, this is your lunch, and you're going to study. And what it does is it does help in those challenging times. Like you said, you know, how did they help? So I can see it was very difficult. Like I had to travel a long journey to almost another state to take an exam. And I remember it was like going over 3 days, and I was up and prepping for it by myself without, you know, I think most alarms, etc. So they do help. And I think this is a nice segue to talk about that inner wisdom, if I may take a minute. I think in terms of the inner wisdom, that surely helps. And that's, as you know, there's someone who wrote about it. I think it is James Clear, that, you know, in the times when you face most difficult challenges, you don't rise up to the challenges, you fall to the level of your training. And if you look into it, it is so true. So when I look back at some of the massive challenges I've had in my life, just like anyone else, I think meditation and going within and having that stillness and quietness has definitely helped. I know it sounds very spiritual, but it is, even when you're going back to your business or running your life, if you look at something outside of yourself, and that where you're going with it. Yeah, so you can really be feeling guided. So even in Smart Heal, I've had very vivid moments where, you're facing this challenge and you'll go within and you'll almost have, that why you'll almost feel guided why you're doing and why you should keep at it. So yeah, it does help. Those habits do help you in those challenging times. And then it's also another layer of being a lifelong student and learning more and more. And I think I've learned a lot in, being an entrepreneur as well. There's so much I'm learning every day. Whether it's reading books and that personal development while I'm learning about the business and the all aspects of my business.
Wonderful. And I can hear again such innate wisdom and the habits and the routine and the discipline that come through. So incredibly beautiful. And Santosh, we only have a couple of moments left. So if people were wanting to get hold of you and hear some more about Smart Heal, what's the best way to contact you?
Absolutely. I think the best way to contact is on the email, santosh@smartheal.org. You can also reach us on LinkedIn, which is Santosh Kaur Smart Heal, or Smart Heal Official. This is the same for Insta and same for Facebook as well, Smart Heal Official.
Fabulous. And very quickly then, if you were to give one piece of advice to your younger self, what might that advice be?
It does not matter what your skin color is, doesn't matter where you come from. If you have something to say, say it. You're entitled to an opinion. You might be wrong, but it's your opinion. You're entitled to it without being disrespectful and hurting others. You're able to share it. If you have a dream, go for it, pursue it. The worst that can happen is fail, and failure is, a lesson learned. So try and go for it.
Oh, and I love that. That passion and that enthusiasm again about trying and going for it and following your dreams. And Santosh, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You've actually been such an inspiration around following your dreams and some of those very practical. Thank you for sharing so much practical suggestions around how to achieve them.
Definitely. And I would invite people to get in touch if there's any more questions or anything that intrigued their mind. I'd love to hear and have a conversation.
Wonderful. But for now, for another incredible episode has gone by, and Santosh and others, we're so grateful that they come on the show. And for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.